Thank you if you're joining us live, or I'm going to just wait a moment so people can populate the Zoom room. And thank you especially too, if you're watching after the fact, please do share this. Today's the last day of National Foster Care Awareness Month. And we're going into the month of June, which a year ago, the Supreme Court ended Roe versus Wade. And that means that we are in a new moment of history, and we have a lot of challenges to step up to the plate to. And that's part of the conversation that we're having today about foster care. I want to thank, I'm Catherine Jean Lopez from the National Review Institute, and I want to thank Kimberly Henkel and Julia Dzelke and Tori Hope Petersen for joining us for this conversation. Kimberly and Tori are doing amazing work and are amazing witnesses. And Julie and I really want to introduce them to more of you. So please help us. Kimberly Henkel has a ministry called Springs of Hope that we'll talk more about. And Tori Hope Petersen, among other things, has a beautiful book called Fostered about her experiences as a child in the foster care system, her experiences being cared for by someone who had real sense of the radical hospitality of the gospel, and her witness now as a foster parent and an adoptive parent, and Kimberly as well as an adoptive parent from foster care. So let me start. Tori, would you want to start us off a little bit, just talking about if someone is seriously thinking about foster care or has never thought about foster care at all, what might be your opening pitch to them?
Yeah, just some background. I first went into the foster care system when I was 3 or 4 years old, and then I was reunited with my mom. That's one of the purposes of the foster care system, is actually to reunite families. I say the purpose of the foster care system is to make families whole, and that can happen through reunification, that can happen through adoption, that can happen through kinship care, many different avenues. But overall, the goal is to make families whole. And so I was reunited with my mom, and then I lived with her until I was a teenager, and then entered the foster care system again until I emancipated the day I turned 18. And I think, especially a lot of people, I think, on this webinar are probably believers. They probably love the Lord like I do. And I think the most important thing is, like, we want to care about the things that Jesus cares about, and Jesus cares about children, and he especially cares about people who are hurting. So I just want to encourage people with that. But also, there's so much that scripture points us to in taking care of the orphan and the widow, taking care of the least of these, that encourages us to get involved in one way or another. And I think the thing about foster care, the thing about becoming involved, is that the foster care system is kind of getting marketing wrong. So you'll hear, like, go be a foster parent. In other words, it's like climb to the high dive and then, like, go and jump in the deep end. But I think that there's a different marketing to this, and it's use what you have, what's in front of you, the giftings that God has given you right where you are to serve in your community. Just wherever you are. I had a track coach who came into my life when I was a junior in high school. I was in the foster care system. There was a lot of preconceived notions about who I was. I was a trouble kid. I moved throughout a lot of homes, and a lot of parents didn't want me. But my track coach, he was just my track coach. But he poured into me. He encouraged me in ways that no one else did. He stuck by my side, trained with me for a year. And I went on to be a 4-time state champion in track and field. And then my track coach welcomed me into his family. That's who I call Dad today. And what did he do? He just used what he had right where he was and said, I'm going to pour into this one person in front of me. So yeah, go be a foster parent. It's absolutely actually really needed. Sometimes I consult organizations on how to improve their organizations in serving those who are underserved. I wanted to go visit an organization in Dallas. And while I was there, they really wanted to build a home and for like a group home. And I was like, why do you want to build a group home? I'm asking questions. And they said that there were 158 children just in that county living in hotels. We know that 60 to 85%, depending on the city, 60 to 85% of human trafficking victims are directly involved in the foster care system. Kids are living in hotels. That is just human trafficking central. And so it's just so needed. I can't say how needed enough it is, but I think sometimes it's better to not tell people to get involved, like to be a foster parent. I think start being a mentor in your community, get involved, to be a CASA, court appointed special advocate. That is a volunteer position. You go into court with the kids and you're going to learn the ropes really easily. That way you're going to learn how to advocate for kids. Then when you do become a foster parent, so start in small, you can start in small ways, but hey, if you want to jump in right now, it's needed. So you can do that.
And one of the small ways that we can jump in is just knowing in our church, in our parish, who the foster parents are, and bring dinner over some night. I mean, it's not brain surgery. And your point, Tori, is so important. So often people think, oh my goodness, foster parents are saints, Yes, saints in the making, right? But you don't have to be extraordinary. God gives you the grace, make a first step and to know that children in our country get arrested as they age out of foster care on purpose so they have somewhere to live. That's something that we need to know and be challenged by. One of the things that drives some of the abortion rhetoric is, oh, there are children in foster care. And so often women who are pregnant in crisis situations, who don't have the support they need, they think that adoption is foster care. Adoption is not foster care. If you choose an adoption plan for a child, that's not the foster care system. But the foster care system is another thing. There are not enough babies for couples who want babies to adopt. But the foster care system is another situation. As you mentioned, Tori, people are concerned, families are concerned that, you've been all these homes, you've had trauma. That's not an excuse to not care for these children. Kimberly, part of the work that you do is wrap around, because it's one thing for a couple to say, okay, I'm going to foster, but it's another thing to actually go through the process. And it can be an agonizing process. Can you talk about a little bit about your ministry and how it helps people?
Yeah, so my husband and I co-founded a ministry called Springs of Love. I think you mentioned Springs of Hope, but it was we got Tori, Hope, Petersen, and
that's all right. I'm doubling down on hope, but we need love too.
So it's Springs of Love, and it's to encourage, educate, and equip Catholics to discern and live out the call to foster and adopt. And, so many of our evangelical brothers and sisters were like doing such a wonderful job. And you hear so much of fostering and adopting going on in a lot of these communities, these church communities. But in the parish, I wasn't hearing much about fostering. And when my husband and I fostered, when we started fostering, we looked around in our classes and we were like, where are all the Catholics? Like it seemed crazy to me as we began to learn more and more about the situation and the fact that there's around 400,000 children in foster care in this country, and there's 120,000 awaiting adoption. There's like so many 23,000 a year aging out. Just these statistics were just so staggering and mind-boggling. And my husband and I were like, why are we not hearing this all the time? All the time, right? Like we should be hearing about this. And so we started Springs of Love, and one of the things we wanted to do is kind of like change the perception of foster care, because I think a lot of people are just sort of like, oh, foster care, I don't know about that, and the government's taking care of it, and it's it's just too messy, I don't want to get involved. It's just and you hear nightmare stories and you get scared and like but we wanted to show like beautiful, inspiring stories and hope, stories of hope and redemption, right? Our God is a God of redemption, and that that yes, there are hard stories. Yes, there are really hard stories. And there's a lot of brokenness. But God calls us to enter into that, right? And to like be his hands and his feet and show his love. So one of the things we started was the Springs of Love video series. And this is how we met Tori. There's a beautiful story. Tori shared her story with us, and we've created several more videos. We have several in production right now. So we're getting ready to have more come out. They're amazing stories of families.
And there's one with some of your children.
Yes, we told our story because it was a remarkable, I mean, for us, we were blessed, to be able to foster and then adopt 4 children. It was just remarkable to us because here we were struggling with infertility, thinking, we'll be really lucky if we can adopt 1 child, because you hear the stories, right? Like, oh, it's so hard to adopt. It's so expensive. It's so this, and we were like, well, you know what? There's all these children who actually are really in need. And why don't we go this route and see if we can foster and maybe adopt in this area? And again, like Tori said, I mean, the primary goal is reunification. But if that can't happen, if it's not safe for a child to go back with their first family, then they're eligible to be adopted. And what a beautiful thing. I mean, it's just, I have to say, I mean, it's just been so wonderful. And I've heard crazy questions like, oh, can you love a child as much, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I could not possibly love my children more than I do. I mean, I couldn't, it would be impossible. So one of the things we want to do with Springs of Love in order to really equip families is to provide and encourage the church communities to find the foster families, to help bring awareness to their churches about the need, and then to wrap around and support those foster families so that they have the energy to keep fostering. Because it's hard. It's really hard. They say 50% of foster families quit after the first year, but if they are surrounded with a supportive community, 90% will continue fostering. And this is what we can tangibly do. Like you said, Catherine, like making a meal for somebody once a month, like that can actually make them decide, you know what, I think I can do this. I'm feeling encouraged. I'm feeling loved. One of our foster families with Springs of Love said, 2 weeks ago, she had a horrible week. It was awful. All this crazy stuff happened. And she said, she was just rushing around doing all these things. And she knew she was coming home that night to a home cooked meal that somebody was bringing to her. And she was like, I cannot even tell you how much that meal meant to me. It was just like somebody cares. Somebody's loving us. Somebody sees us, right? So these little things, they're little. It's not that hard. We're trying to provide all the resources needed to like do these foster care awareness events in the church, like, right after your mass or your parish, after your service, have an event right then, saying, bring in a local foster care representative, bring in a foster family, show one of our videos, Springs of Love videos, and talk about, hey, what can we do as a parish to help support our foster families and to encourage more families to do such a, to step up and do that.
Sometimes just being a listening ear too, we're talking in a Christian context, but I have a Hasidic Jew friend who often talks about her adoption, where if it weren't for the people in her workplace who listened to her talking about, she adopted biracially, her and her husband, and there's so much ideology that goes on in the child welfare system. Just having a listening ear to help accompany her with that was made such a difference. And Julia, Kimberly mentioned, the evangelical Catholic difference here, which I talk a lot about and is part of the reason that we brought this together. Julia, you work for the Catholic Bishops' Conference. And, whereas Catholics were leaders in foster care and adoption decades ago, now there's kind of a sense, well, there's a bureaucracy, so somebody must take care of the problem. If I give to the Cardinal's appeal, kids are being taken care of. Whereas if you have an evangelical church, there's a church or a church with, 3 campuses, and you have to look at what's going on in the community to really meet needs. So Catholics really need to in a new way revision what a parish life looks like and its interaction with the community, because it's not enough to say, oh, somebody in a chancery is taking care of people. We are called, as scripture says, as Tori said so beautifully, to care for the widows and orphans, right? That's not writing a check.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Catherine. I completely agree. I think that it is a beautiful kind of responsibility that we hold as Catholics, as parishes that we call ourselves families of families, right? We are a family. Every parish is a family of families, right? And the Pope Francis has repeatedly used that term to talk about the parish community as a family of families. And so if we really embrace that definition, right? And especially if we love our own families, the families from which we come, the families that we see at Mass. I'm surrounded by lots of families in the Mass, at Mass on Sunday in my parish community. We are filled with families. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But if we love our family, then we can be a place of welcoming for those children who need a family as well, for those children who want to be part of a family like our own. And really, we have to see ourselves, our parish communities, as opening wide our hearts to these young children in need of a family. And the parish is the place to do that. I belong actually to an organization that I just want to give a shout out to. It's based in Washington, D.C., and it's a beautiful organization called DC 127. It harkens back to a scriptural quote. I can't recall which one it is now, but it goes back to 127, somewhere in the Bible, about welcoming the widow and the orphan. And so, I'll find it soon. But basically what it does is it calls upon churches, evangelical churches, Catholic churches, churches of any kind in the DC metropolitan area, and asks them to open wide their hearts and doors as parish communities, as a family of families, to the child in need. And so what they do is they call upon volunteers as mentors to families who are in kind of like a gray zone, right? Who might be in danger of losing their child. And like Tori said earlier, the whole foster care system is based on the desire to reunify those families and to keep them together. So this is a preventative measure calling upon churches first and foremost to step up to the front lines, right, of this call and work together to form like a preventative line of, of battle so that those families can remain intact before having to even reach the foster care system. And so as a mentor myself, for about 2 years now, I can say that it is a beautiful organization that is committed to this gospel call, committed to the scriptural message of caring for the orphan and the family, and does this by calling upon churches to step up to the plate. And so it's a beautiful way to also help these families and ensure that they remain intact and don't have to reach that point of foster care. But that's just one of many organizations that I know are out there. But DC 127 is a great start. And like we've been saying, you just start somewhere. And if you can provide that support to a mother in need, to a father in need who wants to hold on to their children, who wants to be able to offer that safe place for them, but they just need, like you were saying, Catherine, that listening ear. They just need that listening ear or that extra hand, or maybe they just need a little extra, rent money for that month, or some help with the groceries, whatever it may be. This organization does a number of these things to ensure that that family can remain together. So that's like one way of ensuring that, we do act as a community of faith-filled people, as believers, as a family of families in God's name.
And also, it's so important that this is about children. We titled this event "No Child Left Behind" because it can't be about adults. It needs to be about the children who need homes. And so, yeah, maybe it's reunification, because that, of course, in most cases is the best thing. But if it can't be, obviously finding that forever family, as is said, is so critical, and as soon as possible. Tori, could you talk a little bit about your book and what you were hoping to inspire? You obviously, from the heart, share such brutal stories, but it's also so inspiring because you're a real person living in the world today, and this is doable. When we hear 400,000 children in foster care, it sounds overwhelming, but if people actually step up to the plate, it's not. It's not, if every Christian church stepped up to the plate, one family, we could solve this crisis.
Yeah. When I wrote the book, my hope was to write the book that I needed. I wanted to write a book that inspired kids coming from really hard places, young adults who are trying to navigate life without parents. But then God was so gracious and he used it beyond that, help foster parents. I am not.
Kimberly, let's talk a little bit. One of the things we talked about at the beginning of this webinar before we got on is the practical. And I know that's something that Tori is close to Tori's heart as well. Again, people who were maybe never really thought about this before, or people who are just on the edge of making a decision. What are some of the considerations and advice you might give?
Yeah, well, when you're discerning this, I mean, you want to obviously take into consideration your situation. Do you have children at home already? How is this going to affect them? And, particularly when you have, you have little children, they advise that if you're going to foster, you really want to bring in children who are younger than your children. So that's, something like that is important to be aware of, right? But there are so many beautiful families who maybe their children have already grown and they have great parenting skills. Like when my husband and I were first fostering, they were like, we are not giving you older children because you have no parenting experience. And, I couldn't understand it at first, but now I do. I understand that. So people whose children are, grown and gone, they are amazing, right? To take some older children who've maybe had like a lot of trauma and they have that experience of being able to set boundaries and, things like that. And they can be better. Another option that I really want to talk about is doing respite. So you can go through the foster care training and I mean, our training through the state of Ohio was amazing. I mean, it was amazing. I was very impressed with the training we went through. There were a lot of Christians that were offering the training. I was just so inspired by so many of their stories. But you go through the training and then you can be a respite provider. So then they would call you and say, hey, are you able to take this child or these children for a few hours, a few days? And you say yes, or no, as your schedule permits. But I'll tell you, I met this family at the zoo and they had adopted a little girl from China, and there was this beautiful, like such a joy-filled family. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I wanted to meet them. And they told me, we used to be a foster family, but now we've adopted and, we have some special needs here. So what we've decided is we're a respite family. They were like, we bring in kids for the weekend. We just love them up. We take them to the zoo. We do all these fun activities with them. And we just show them love, and I thought, what an amazing thing. And I'll tell you, we just did a foster care awareness event in Columbus. It was called a family for every child. And it was amazing. It was very well attended. I met this couple there, an older couple that are grandparents age, grandparents. And they said, could we foster and become like grandparents to a child? And they really wanted to do that. And I was like, yes, like how amazing is that? They wanted to really do like a respite situation. And they were like, could we get the same children like over and over again and just really form a deep relationship with them and be like their grandparents? And I was like, absolutely. Like, how amazing, right? Like a lot of people don't even think of that as an opportunity, but that's something they can do.
There was that religious freedom case a couple of years ago with the Beckett Fund, where that's exactly the situation. There were older Black women who were taking in boys who no one else loved, and the city of Philadelphia for a time was keeping them from that because of, again, ideology. these kids need homes and we need to remove all obstacles to loving families who want to care. One of the things I love about your book, Tori, is it's reality. We can't pretend that, foster care and adoption is Pollyannish and that it's all a happy story. But also, one of the problems that Kimberly alluded to is sometimes you hear these horror stories and life is much more complicated than that. And the tremendous love you have for your birth mother is clear, even as she had challenges selling drugs and all the rest but really trying to provide for you in the mess of addiction and all these other problems. What you were starting to tell us about how you wrote a book for you, for children in your situation. What do you want other people to know too about foster care and so that it's not a caricature?
Yeah. Well, now you know why the speaker on stage always has water.
Always has water.
Always. And I've never actually, when I'm a public speaker, that is my full-time job. And I've actually never had to use my water on stage. And now I'm always going to bring it.
Oh, that is one of my diva rules, actually, that I have to have water on the podium.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a cold. So all that to say, I'm sorry. But the thing that I think I want people to take away from the book, but also just from the life that I aspire to live, is to see people as God sees them. I think, we're talking a lot about Catholicism, evangelism, the differences and in the cultures and things. But I think one of the things that's common between both, even though, like we were saying, yeah, the evangelical community has kind of taken the mantle up on foster care and adoption, there are still plenty of people in the evangelical and Protestant church, that just pulling people in church, period, who view the foster care system as this broken place. That's too broken for me to step into. The things there are too messy. But we have to realize we have the Holy Spirit that dwells within our very being. And that means we have the power to step into things and heal them and make them more whole alongside Jesus. And so I think that the thing that I just want all people to take away is, to remember the power that God gives us to heal, to give hope to other people, and to change the way we see. If we choose to see the foster care system, underserved communities, people coming from hard places, if we choose to see them as God sees them, then we're going to interact with them the way that He wants us to interact with them. We're going to care for them. We're going to show up for them. We're going to bring them into our homes. I think it was Julia. She mentioned the 127. That's James 127. And it talks about pure and faultless religion being taking care of the orphan and the widow. And then it's like, that's the end. And it's like of the chapter. And it's like, oh, we don't get any instruction here. Like, what does this mean? But those big numbers that are in scripture, those are put in by the modern man. So if you just take that out and say, okay, what is the instruction here? And you keep reading, it says, if a poor man comes into your home, treat him the same way that you would a rich man. Don't put him at your feet. Put him in the same places that you would put the rich man. And I think that that's just, it's such a good vision to what foster care is. If now, like, we have this system, right? What the foster care system is it's really just this huge barrier, unfortunately, because we have to get certified. We have to jump through all these hoops. But the reality is, if most Christians received a child at their door, I believe that they wouldn't put them at their feet. They would say, oh my goodness, this child is here. We got to put them up. But because the foster care system has presented itself as it is, because it is what it is, and the government's taking care of it, then that's what prevents us. But we have to jump through these hoops in our modern culture to be able to put that child at the same place that the rich man would be.
I was reading an article just this morning about the Bruderhof community in Plow magazine, and they were talking about how people are kind of living in community and they share cars and they share, there's something of the Acts of the Apostles about that we could afford to reinvent or reinvigorate, where we're actually looking at our neighbors and seeing the needs. And I should say, if you're watching this live, please feel free to put questions in the chat box. And Tina Andrews, who works in an agency, an adoption agency, has made a comment about how educating Christians was kind of their goal, and she's been disappointed about the reaction. Kimberly, you just had an event last week in Columbus at a church, and you said it was successful. What seems to make the difference with actually activating people?
I mean, honestly, I just think people want to help. And I think a lot of people are just paralyzed, like not sure what to do. And so I was very happy to hear the response, because, we did our presentation and we had a foster family give their testimony, and we had a foster care agency, give their spiel and kind of talk about the need in our community. Because I think, that's where we need to start, right? Is like right in our backyard. Like there are children in our backyard that need homes, that need support, that need help. Like they're right here. And so just kind of letting people know. And then, we spoke about Springs of Love. We showed Tori's beautiful video and everybody loved that. And we served them dinner. And I'll tell you, afterwards, everybody was like, yes, sign me up. People were like, yes, I want to do respite. Because I said, that is just an easy little baby step, to actually doing it. And you're bringing children into your home that you can just love on, and you kind of learn more about it. Another way is, starting up a little care team in your parish. Like we're calling it a foster love team. And, that you can start this up in your parish or your church, and just, get some people together. One person calls the foster family once a week. You just call them, check up on them. How are you doing? What are your needs this week? How can we support you? How can we pray for you? Prayer is absolutely fundamental, to know that you have somebody praying for you. Prayer is so powerful, right? It's huge. And like all of us can do that, right? Like that's why, like, the little old lady who maybe, there's no way she can foster, and maybe she can't, but she could be the person giving the foster family a call each week. Like, how's it going? What's going on? What do you need? And then she mobilizes, lets everybody else, like on the text, whatever, email. Okay, they need a crib. They've got a baby coming in a couple days. They need a crib. They need some size, 16-month, whatever, 18-month clothing. They need, and we could just mobilize, right? I mean, I signed up our church to do the care portal, which is so amazing. I'll tell you, this woman contacted me. She was like, I'm in need. I'm close to losing my kids. Like, I need some things for them. I need some help. And like, I went and hung out with her yesterday. It was awesome. And I'm just like, there's people like right in our backyard that we don't even know about, right? We don't even know. But as soon as we start hearing, I think that as Christians, I think we do feel that stirring, and we do want to help. So I just think that's why I'm trying to make it as easy as possible on Springs of Love to like I'm trying to simplify it. Like, let's just make it as easy peasy as possible. Like if every church can do a foster care awareness event, talk about the needs in their community, and then, mobilize a team of people to just, find the families in your parish or in your community that could use some support, and just support them.
Heather, can I just jump in there?
By the way, Tina Andrews works for Adoras Angels in Alexandria, Virginia. And I know for a fact it's a foster care agency. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of people in the metropolitan Washington, D.C. area who are watching this. And so check out Adoras Angels, check out DC 125, right?
127.
127. I'm so bad at numbers. Can you, Kimberly, just talk a little bit about Care Portal? Because I bet there are people who are listening who don't know what that is. And that's a very practical thing.
Yeah. I mean, I just went to careportal.org. I'm not sure. Just Google Care Portal, and you can sign up your church. to, to assist. And then whenever there's a need in your community, they send out a message. Hey, I got a message yesterday. There's this couple and they're trying to keep their family together. They had been living in a car. They just got their own apartment and now they need some furniture. Can you help? It's just like simple things. And like I said, this other woman, just contacted me and was like, I'm new to the area. I don't know anybody. I need some help, things like that. And it's just a way to kind of connect, but that's like easy way of getting involved is just sign up for Care Portal. That's, a way to, yeah.
Well, and as Tori was saying, like, because there's this system, it seems so exotic and foreign and like impenetrable. But the fact of the matter is, people just need to open their eyes. And there are some very simple solutions. Now, that having been said, Naomi Schaefer Riley has written the book on the foster care system and the need for reform. And it is a very, very depressing book in some regards, but there's also a chapter that focuses on so many solutions. And so it's important for, again, for pro-life people in a particular way to consider how we can be part of the solution. Because, for many years, I wrote about pro-life issues and there's this, what's called a lazy slander against pro-lifers that we don't care about children after they're born. But if there are children in the foster care system, there's some truth to that. We really need to make sure that these children have homes and have a shot. There are so many cases of people on death row who were in the foster care system who never had a shot in life. And that's an indictment on us. It's an indictment on pro-lifers, on Christians, on people of faith, and people of goodwill. This isn't just a Christian issue. Tori, you also, you're in your personal witness, you've been creative about your adoption witness, not just little children, right? An adult. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Catherine, I love that you said that about pro-lifers. I think that that's something that we're often scared to say. We don't want to make anybody mad, but we should be more concerned about doing what God wants us to do. And so sometimes we have to say the hard thing. We have to speak the truth and be like, we're actually not doing this to the extent that I think would make God pleased. And so let's get involved in foster care more so as pro-life people. I just appreciate that you said that so much. My husband and I have done foster care, and we have taken in people who have experienced homelessness, adults. And through that process, we had a young man who came to us. He was an immigrant, and he just came here, and the family that he came here with abandoned him for multiple cultural reasons that we just learned along the way. Knew a lot, knew very little about immigration and different cultural differences that come with that until we met him. And this is my son, Leander.
Hello.
With that, he was living with us for probably about a year, and he just asked us, like, would you adopt me? Like, you guys are my family. And we're like, yeah, we are your family, but like, we're not your parents, because like there was just we had the age gap was like 6 years. And so, but we prayed about it, and we thought, actually the reason that we cared, the reason we had hesitancy was because we actually were thinking about what everyone else would say. When I was in foster care, I was eventually taken in by my track coach, as I said. And I remember when he took me in, there were a lot of weird assumptions, and it was really sad because it was one of the purest relationships I'd ever had. And then there were these assumptions that were being made about it. And so we were like, oh, we don't want to do that. But my track coach did anyway. he did it anyway. And he showed me love, and he chose to not listen to the naysayers. And so we decided to adopt our adult son, Sar, and we are still licensed foster parents as well.
Well, and that's such, again, an important reminder that there are children who, if you don't have a family, you don't know who to call when you need advice on a job interview, or I mean, really simple things. People need people in their lives. And so being creative about radical hospitality is an important thing for Christians. Kimberly, are there lessons that you've learned along the way in working with other foster families that you might want to highlight to people?
Yeah, I think, what I hear a lot is just that they feel like an island. They just feel like people are looking at them like they have three heads when they walk into mass with, suddenly like more children, and
Or children who don't look like them, which
right,
is
absolutely.
something that Tori brings up in her book, because she had to really struggle with that as a child. People looking at her strangely, trying to figure out what race she is and why do these things matter,
Right, absolutely. Yeah, just feeling like that they are on their own, like sort of this attitude of, well, you got yourself into this, so you got to figure it out. And just not having that sense of community that, actually this is something, these are God's kids, these are God's children. And, we're stepping up to bring them into our home, but, we really could use that support and encouragement, I'll tell you, I mean, we have two foster families in Columbus. I really don't know hardly any Catholic foster families, which in our area, which breaks my heart. I'm just like, where are all the foster families? But they've told me, how much just having each other, right, as support has meant. It's like that encouragement, because you get attached to these children, you love them with your whole heart, and then if they leave you, it's devastating. It's like you really have to grieve that. I mean, it's a big loss to lose children that you have come to just love as your own, and they've been part of your family, and then they've left. And that's something you need, a support community that's going to love you and help you. And, a lot of times, foster families after that, they'll be like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not
Right.
doing it. But if they have a community of support of others, like, honey, I've been there, we had to lose our little one, and, and trying to continue that relationship with the birth family, that's the best, and we actually just recorded some videos on that. There's one online right now of losing the children back to their families, which, it's beautiful. They can be reunited with their families, but then continuing the relationship. And it's different, right? It's different because they're no longer like under your roof, and, the bond of the family. It's hard, but like we have one of our families that these two little boys that were with them, and we just did a story, and you guys, it is like, it's going to make you cry. The birth dad had been in prison, and he had gotten out, and he fought to get his boys back. He did all the work that he needed to do. This family was just about to adopt these two little boys. They were completely in love with these boys. They'd had them almost 3 years. And then the birth dad was able to get his boys back. And it was heartbreaking, right? And for that first year, the father was like, I need some separation because I need a bond with my boys, which you can understand. But after that year, the family was just praying they could be a part of those boys' lives again. The father called them up and was like, let's get together. And now those boys spend like every other weekend with them, and they're close. And this dad, he came on video and shared his story and how much this family meant to him, that they've become more family to him than his own family. And it's beautiful when you see things like this happen. It's just so beautiful and inspiring and unexpected, right? That this beautiful relationship, after such heartache, right, of losing your child, then getting them back in a different way, right, and adopting their whole family. It's just beautiful.
I have a friend who has four children, now adults, from foster care, and they all have mental illness struggles, and it really is heart-wrenching. but what she always remembers is these are God's children first. And so he loves them even more than she could possibly love them, which is amazing to think about when you think about a love that a mother or a father has for their child. But that's part of the whole mindset with which we have to approach foster care. These are God's children. These are created beings. And as Tori was saying earlier, how can you look at them as God the Father looks at them, which we can't do, but with his grace, we can have a little approach to. And that's so important. It's not about, fulfilling desires, although our desires to serve God. So it's that desire, right? But yeah, we have to approach this with both the reality of the human heartache that goes into this, but that we're part of a bigger story. And so I think that's how the love is possible and the hope is possible. And Tori, I didn't fully realize, I've been reading your story for a couple of years, but Victoria Hope is the name that your mother gave you. Really focusing even in her struggles on the victory that's possible, with Jesus, and obviously having hope that you could flourish, which you are. If by God's grace, somebody who is in the foster care system is watching this video, what's a message you might want to give them, Tori?
I just want to tell them that they're so loved. When you go through the foster care system, when you're moving throughout homes, or maybe you're not moving throughout homes, maybe you're in one home, but still you've experienced separation from your first family. There's just always the doubt, we all have it. All adoptees and all former foster youth, it's the commonality that we all share. We all share this doubt, this wondering, am I really wanted? Am I really loved? And the answer is yes. Like, God loves you so much. People can kick you out of their home. People can not let you. And this really goes for anyone. You have a friend who, for some reason, that relationship has broken off. You have that person who won't call or text you back. You have that person that you miss. And those people who leave you out, they leave you out, but God has made a place for the kingdom, in the kingdom of heaven for you. And, people can say, oh, this person is that or this. For me, I was not wanted. I was moved throughout a lot of homes. I was a troubled child. And maybe people are saying things about you, that are really discouraging, that's making you question your identity. But God says, you're my son. You're my daughter. I've adopted you. And I think that's really the most beautiful thing. When we're talking about foster care and adoption, we want to foster and adopt because it's a call. We want to foster and adopt. We want to serve those who are underserved because it's a call, but also because it's what God has done for us, right? We are adopted. We are sons and daughters. And that's the greatest gift that we could ever experience. And then just super practical, it gets better. I remember when I was in the foster care system, I was just
I think we had a little technical. It always, I always have to wonder if it's my connection or somebody else's connection.
Yeah.
So grateful. Oh, go ahead, Tori, you're back.
Oh, sorry, was that me? I was just saying that it gets better. When I was in the foster care system, I had this calendar where I would mark off the days. I would count down the days until I turned 18. I just couldn't wait for it to come. And I remember I would tell adults in my life that I can't wait to be an adult. I can't wait to be 18. And they would be like, oh yeah, you just wait. You wait till you have to pay bills. You wait till you have kids. That's when things really get hard. And I just I want to challenge, like the adults and kids' lives who are coming from hard places, to encourage them to speak words of life over them. Proverbs 18:21 says that words have the power of life and death. And I believe that there's nothing in between. Like, our words have life or death. And I remember when I would hear that from adults, I'd get so discouraged, like, oh, it's not going to get better. And then I became an adult and I have this life, and it is a lot better. So just want to encourage, if there is anyone listening, that it gets better when we are walking hand in hand with Jesus. If you don't know him, go to a church. You can know him, and he is so, so good. And the other thing is, if there are people on here who have kids in their lives that are in a hard place, just start with speaking words of life. That can go a long way.
Julia, you work for the Bishops' Conference, and there's a campaign initiative, Walking with Moms in Need. And part of the Walking with Moms is exactly what Tori was talking about. I'm a big friend and advocate of the Sisters of Life, who are a community of religious sisters who, one of their vows, they take the normal vows nuns take: poverty, chastity, and obedience, but also the sanctity, to protect the sanctity of human life. And they have visitation missions, and today's the Feast of the Visitation in Scripture, where Mary and Elizabeth met with their unborn children in their wombs. And so the Sisters of Life have visitation missions where abortion-minded women will wind up, and the first thing the sisters say isn't "don't have an abortion." The first thing they say is not about pregnancy. It's cold outside. Do you need a sweater? Can I get you some tea? They love on them. And I apologize for people who've heard me say this a million times, but I learned from them that there are people in this country who have never had a birthday celebrated. Like, can you imagine? And maybe you can. Nobody ever celebrating your birthday. Well, of course you would struggle with the value of life if no one's ever loved on your life, And so, Julia, have you seen anything that encourages you as we go from National Foster Care Awareness Month to the year anniversary of the end of Roe versus Wade?
Yeah, actually, I want to encourage folks to take a look at the last webinar that we did together with Catherine and NRI, if you haven't seen it already. And that was in December, Making Room in the Inn. And that was originally it was going to be for November, for Adoption Awareness Month. But it was really good because we had Archbishop Naumann join us, who's former chairman for the committee that you just mentioned, Catherine, pro-life activities here at the USCCB. And Archbishop Naumann shared with us his own experience as a young person growing up without his father. His father had passed away at an early, when he was young. And that's why he actually I believe he might have still been in vitro. He might have still been in his mother's womb when the father passed away. So the mother entrusted him to St. Joseph as his foster father. And so so Archbishop Naumann is doing wonderful things in his archdiocese in Kansas City for this effort. And helping mobilize that response among Catholics. And this is, speaking from the Catholic bishops, this is something that I believe as a church, there's a lot that we can do. And we talked about that earlier, but I think awareness, number one, so awareness like they're doing in the Archdiocese of Kansas City, bringing this to the attention of families, of parishes, like I said earlier, that family of families that were meant to be. And then also just addressing, I think, the fear. So I like what Tori said earlier about not being afraid of the brokenness. The foster care system is kind of, seen as broken, right? Broken children, broken issues, broken trauma, whatever. But we can't be afraid of that because, like Tori rightly pointed out, we have the Holy Spirit with us. I mean, we just celebrated Pentecost. We're all temples of the Holy Spirit in baptism. I mean, we have the gifts that we need to face the fear, and we should not be afraid because love casts out all fear, right? And so if we can truly love as a community of faith, as a community of hope and of love, then there's no reason to be afraid. There's no reason to be afraid of the messiness, of the brokenness, of the challenges, of the trauma, of anything out there. So I am really pleased that the Archdiocese of Kansas City is kind of like a model of really putting forth all the options out there, and letting Catholic communities know that there are lots of options for helping and facing these issues together as a family of families and just as a community of faith, hope, and love. And so I encouraged anyone who hasn't seen it to go back and look at that webinar, but also to continue thinking and praying about what you can do individually to work together for this effort.
Well, and when we think about foster care, I mean, reality check, anyone who's ever been a parent or knows a parent knows that you can't control how your child turns out, and so the idea that somehow, a child in foster care is more broken or more of an uncertainty, life is uncertain. And so embrace that. And as you've all been reflecting on, there's a bigger plan. And so we do have to have faith that we'll be given grace to be able to meet the challenges as they are. And, if you're watching and you're not religious, there's so many resources too. The fact, the doubling down on love, Kimberly, is so important. We have to end this. So can I give Tori and Kimberly a last word for encouragement to people and maybe challenge? Tori, if you want to start.
Yeah, wait, I have something that I read the other day, and it's like, that's the thing that it's happening again, that the Lord brought to me. So I'm going to look that up. So can she go first?
All right, Kimberly.
Yes, no. Yeah, I mean, I say, think about, pray about, how God is, stirring your heart to get involved, because everybody can do something. On our website, again, springsoflove.org, we have a whole section on foster love that we've just developed. And we've got a 10 ways to help vulnerable children. And like I said, there's simple ways like praying. Praying is absolutely huge. And foundational, and we can't discount that, but that's so important. Sharing on social media, having an awareness event at your parish, offering to babysit for somebody who's fostering, there's just so many ways that you can get about mowing the lawn of a foster family. That would be huge when they're just, bogged down with appointments and special, visits with birth families and things like that. Anyway,
Doing the
laundry. Yes. Every mom loves that.
There you go.
Absolutely. But there are so many different things. So, I just want to encourage people to find a way to get involved and supporting the work. I mean, we could use volunteers at Springs of Love. So, I mean, that's another way. If you, have a gift, you don't want to foster yourself, but, it's not the right time, but you can get involved with other ministries that are doing this work. So.
And I don't know if this is too simple, but if you're I'm thinking in a Catholic context here, a Catholic parish, ask the pastor for a little bulletin entry.
Yes.
Who are the foster parents, and maybe do a little advertisement for Springs of Love, to get to know people in your church a little bit better, because so often that's a problem, and that is a problem, right? If we don't know one another. Springsoflove.org. And Tori, your last.
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
Oh, that's okay.
So I'm just gonna say it, and I'm not gonna say it as beautifully as it was written, but I was talking about how Jesus has ascended to heaven, and so it's like Jesus' hands are no longer on this earth, except ours. Jesus' feet are no longer on this earth except ours. Jesus' mouth is no longer on this earth except ours. And so if you are wrestling, I go and I speak to audiences and I say, get involved, and there's so much wrestling that happens. And so I know after this webinar, there's going to be a lot of wrestling in people's hearts. And I think that is just a thing that is so encouraging as we step in. We are Jesus' hands and feet and mouth. And if you're wondering what to do next, that's a good place to start.
And again, this isn't a crisis that only Christians or pro-lifers need to be the solutions for, but we have a particular responsibility, an enhanced responsibility. And a couple of years ago, I was with Robert Putnam, the author of Bowling Alone, Harvard sociologist, and he said to me, if Christians really lived the Beatitudes, we wouldn't have most of the problems that we have. And I think of that in a particular way when it comes to foster care. Julia, do you want to have a last word?
Gosh, there has been so much said here, and so many beautiful things, but I would just go back on, yeah, I agree that really as a community, we have that responsibility. And as believers, we shouldn't be afraid. And there is so much out there that we can do, and just leave it in God's hands. Just like you said earlier, just pray about this. What is God asking me specifically to do in my little place, right? What kind of messiness can I bring? And just one more thought based on the Catholic context, because we're entering into the parish level of the Eucharistic National Revival. And if we talk about the Eucharist specifically, the Eucharist, which means Thanksgiving, but it's Jesus's body, right? Broken and poured out for us, right? I'm just thinking like that's what we're being asked to do too. God is asking us really to be broken and opened for the salvation of the world together with him. So enter into the messiness with him. He who did not, shy away from our messiness to save us. So why should we be afraid to enter into the messiness of another person's life to save them and to just love on them, like you've all been saying? So I think it's a particular challenge for us as Catholics entering into this as part of the Eucharistic revival, to remember that Christ is the first example of just being broken open and poured out for everyone. So we can do the same, and God is counting on us. So just a thought there.
I'm always brought back to the example of people like Dorothy Day, who really talked about radical hospitality and didn't have like a perfect portrait of what that looked like. It just meant meeting people where they were, and recognizing that none of us are unbroken, right? We've all got challenges and wounds and all the rest. And during COVID, I often thought about, so many of us struggled in different ways, but imagine being that child who has no one, right? And that's who we need to be thinking about. And I do commend to you the book Fostered, One Woman's Powerful Story of Finding Faith in Family Through Foster Care by Tori Petersen. Thank you for joining us, Tori. Thank you, Kimberly Henkel, springsoflove.org. And thank you, Julia, for helping organize this, because you really rallied us to do this, because it's so important to keep the foster care challenge on people's radars. It's a challenge of love, and it's not as difficult as we make it out to be when we don't actually think about it. So thank you. You can watch this on, maybe you are right now, on the National Review Institute's YouTube page. And please, 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 please feel free to share it and some of these resources. Well, if you're on social media, one of the videos that Kimberly Henkel has put together, Tori is on there, Kimberly is on there. Thank you so much. And please keep following the National Review Institute, because we'll have more events like this, I promise. Thank you.
Thank you.